The sitting is resumed. Honourable Member St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up, let me thank those members who contributed to the debate. A member for St. Michael Southeast, also the member for St. Michael East, and the member for St. James South. I thank you. Mr. Speaker, you know, it's often said that when you don't have information, you can say almost anything, but is it factual? And I'm not here to wrap up this debate to create any more tension among us as a grouping, because we can agree to disagree and still remain friends. But at the end of the day, to say that we don't have a housing policy is really something that is not true. Let me just say that. Without going into any more discussion on the matter of not having a housing policy. We have a housing policy, Mr. Speaker, and as I wrap up, I will elaborate on a few of the tenets of this housing policy. Because, Mr. Speaker, and I will ask a few questions, Mr. Speaker, as I seek to wrap up the debate. Mr. Speaker, prior to 2022, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that successive governments were tinkering with housing in this country. Governments were building 100 houses a year. Sometimes years would go by another house built in this country. Mr. Speaker, it is known, it is common knowledge in this country that if you travel from the top, St. Lucie, to St. Philip and Christchurch, and you analyze, or you pick up the paper and you look at the price of land in this country, you will see that the price of land, it ranges from between $15 a square foot to as high as $20, $25, sometimes $30 a square foot. And Mr. Speaker, to ask a gas attendant or a policeman, policewoman, to ask a teacher, some can, to purchase land at that price range is a no-no, Mr. Speaker. Where in this country can a gas attendant purchase land at $20 a square foot? Tell me where. Unless they're well endowed by some other firm, some family member. But in terms of buying land from their salaries, these are persons who are working for less than $2,500 a square, $2,500 per month, sorry, let me say a square foot. A month. These are persons whose salaries are probably sometimes less than $2,000 a month. These are persons who are at the minimum wage bracket in this country. And Mr. Speaker, this government that I'm a part of, and I'm proud to be a part of this government, capped the price of land as we seek to build out the 10,000 houses and to allow the average person to own a home in this country. We capped the price of land at $12 a square foot. Mr. Speaker, that's a tenet of the policy. We went on, Mr. Speaker, to cap the price of the services at $5 a square foot, Mr. Speaker. Tell me where a contractor, an investor, builder going to cap services at $5 a square foot in this country. That's another tenet of the policy, the housing policy in this country. And why we did that? Because we wanted, or we need, home ownership to spread in this country. We want the base of the pyramid to be occupied by houses and not just by persons working, the base of the pyramid. And you know what I mean when I say the base of the pyramid. Those persons who work for less than $2,000 a month are at the base of the pyramid. The gas attendants, our lovely police force, those members, teachers, some teachers, maids. And that is why the government, and I took the charge as Minister of Housing, to have what we call housing fairs in this country. We populated Golden Square for an entire day. We went to QEH, then we went to the police, where those forces, not only the police force, but we had the soldiers, those services came and filled out applications. And Mr. Speaker, we were charged with the responsibility as part of the policy to clean up the backlog of persons who have been applying for housing through NHC over the years. And we had over 18,000 applicants. I mean, when we sieved through the applications and everything and we sanitized it, we found some 15,000 odd applicants. But interesting enough, more than 50% of those applicants were civil servants. More than 50% of those applicants were civil servants. So, Mr. Speaker, I am here to elaborate, clarify some of the issues raised about a housing policy. And if I have to do more public relations and speaking on it, I will. Because from today, there should be no uncertainty in this chamber or outside of this chamber on the government's housing policy. Having capped the price of land at $12 a square foot, the price of services at $5 a square foot, we went further. And we introduced, for the first time by a government in this country, utilization of photovoltaic systems on the roof of the house, so we can drive down the cost of these houses. And I keep calling the group in, the nurses, teachers, gas attendants, maids, policemen and women soldiers. I think it is next Saturday that I go to address a housing fair by a private sector company in this country, a large private sector company in this country. And they're satisfied with government housing policy that they've asked me to come and open the housing fair in a few days' time. But, Mr. Speaker, this speaks to the confidence in this government with respect to housing and its housing policy. And I started on the photovoltaic systems because, you know, I'm sorry that my good friend was not in the chamber when I spoke this morning, to let him know that we have allocated, we have found estimated acreage of 2,074.95 acres of land in this country. And I said this morning, I am not going to tell you if you average at 10 houses per acre, how much that can give you. We are still focusing on our target of building some 10,000 houses in over the next 4 years, because a year has passed already. And to allow you to know in this chamber that at today's date, we have built some 941 houses. This includes the private sector, because we keep saying, and I heard the comment about the private sector, but the private sector, we create the enabling environment so that persons can build houses in this country. We have a department, and it is where now I mentioned my good friend, the member for St. Michael's South Central, who spent years as the minister responsible for planning and development. And she started the process. And with all due respect, I did not mention her this morning, but it would be remiss of me to carry on this debate and don't recognize the work that the member for St. Michael's South Central did with the Planning and Development Division of government. And now, the member for Christchurch West, who has full responsibility to ensure, and I mentioned this morning, that we vet applications in a way, a level of transparency, not only transparent, but in a way to ensure that there's seamless transitioning from application stage to building stage. And that's the role of the member for Christchurch West. And we meet daily, either on phone or by Zoom or in person, depends on the nature of the matter at hand. And, Mr. Speaker, if we don't recognize that this government have to emphasize it, we are not tinkering with the housing policy in this country. You have to dream big to achieve big targets. You can't come and get a poo-poo target of 100 houses a year. What is that going to do for the policemen, the policewomen, the firemen, the teachers? What is that going to do for those persons whose salary are close to the base of the pyramid? If we continue to tinker with the housing policy, if we don't cap the price of land, if we don't cap the price of services, if we don't innovate and utilize photovoltaic on the roof of these houses, those persons in Ellerton, St. George, and Greens, and Bite Mill will not be able to own a home in this country. And in St. Lucie, Rockfield, in those places, and in the city, in St. Andrew, in St. Michael, north, east, south, west, wherever. Mr. Speaker, I'm not angry. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about what I do on behalf of this government and the people of this country. And I walk with these every day. They're not digital, I have them digital. But I walk with these every day to show you where the land is in this country. From St. Lucie to Christchurch, St. Michael. Our housing policy, Mr. Speaker, is catering towards persons who we recognize cannot own a home in this country by getting a mortgage certificate. So what have we done to cater to that grouping who's working for less than $2,000 a month? We have created a rent-to-own policy as part of the housing policy so that these persons can continue to rent, but not rent for life. A 30-year rental policy with a view to own their own home. Mr. Speaker, those are some of the tenets of the housing policy. Mr. Speaker, the Condominium Act allows us at this stage now to sell high-rise units, the Condominium Act, and we have piece of land at Exmouth in the constituency of, I think it's Northwest, bordering St. Michael West. You gotta get some, my good friend from St. Michael West. You have to get some. I owe you. I owe you big time, my friend. From St. Michael West. He knows why I'm saying that. And that piece of land, I owe him housing. That's all. I don't owe him anything else. Housing. I keep it on track. Thank you, my good friend from Christchurch. He wants me to keep on track. I'll keep on track, but I owe you. The piece of land at Exmouth. It is our wish as a government to build some high-rise there. But we are not building high-rise like the last administration at $500 a unit. Per square foot, sorry. We can't do that. I ain't going back in history though. That was criminal. We cannot build for working class people, and that's our policy. That's why we cap in the price of services and the price of land, because we cannot go and construct today a high-rise unit for working class people at $500 a square foot and charge them. I'm reviewing those rates at National Housing right now. And I bold to say that because it's up to cabinet to decide. But I'm representing a class of people in this country that were neglected over the years as it relates to housing. I have to represent them. And I will not be part of any government who ignores the plight of the working class people in this country. We cater to every single class. So the Condominium Act will allow us to sell those. The 30-year right to own. I spoke this morning on the 40 acres of land at Lower Burney, 19.9 acres going to Hope, and the other 20 point whatever acres going to National Housing to engage in joint venture partnerships. That is part of the housing policy. How will National Housing sustain its operations? Part of the housing policy, and the most important part of the housing policy, was to take housing off the balance sheet. And that's why we formed Hope. The government is the sole shareholder. And soon to be, we'll have our annual general meeting where we are looking at not only finishing Vesper Gardens, the 154 houses that I discussed this morning, but we are making sure that we take it off of the government's balance sheet. And I mentioned the Blue-Green Bank this morning. That's part of the policy, taking off the balance sheet. That's why we are shareholders in the Blue-Green Bank, so that we can allow, based on investment from whoever, come later this year, we have some $500 million available to this government, so we can take the housing project off the books. We have taken it already, but we have to look for funding for it so it don't impact our balance sheet and allow us to maintain our fiscal position as we restructure and we seek to grow this economy. Last year and this year, we will have growth. Housing policy is part of this growth policy of government. Mr. Speaker, I'm not angry. I'm passionate about what we are doing on behalf of housing. Give me anything to look after. I look after it passionately and I guard it. That's how we are, each and every one of us. We guard our properties, right, member for St. Michael East? You guard your property. Mr. Speaker, we are also utilizing the Housing Credit Fund. This is off balance sheet. This is part of the policy still. And I mentioned this morning that we have between 40 million and 50 million in the Housing Credit Fund. And the rent to own units and houses will be built from the Housing Credit Fund. That's off the balance sheet. That's part of the policy again. Mr. Speaker, part of our policy was to diversify this economy. Another part of the policy was to diversify the housing stock in this country. We're diversifying it. We are building light gauge steel houses. We are building hardwood houses. We're also utilizing the bricks and mortar that we know. Masonry. Bricks and mortar, man. Masonry. Persons now have choices. That's part of the government housing policy. The light gauge steel houses. And let me say to you, we have signed a contract with Joe Villa out of Guyana to provide hardwood houses. I am going tomorrow morning to show a project manager one of the houses that we installed at Watts Village in St. George. The member for Christchurch, West is laughing, but I heard the member for St. Michael Southeast spoke about charity beginning at home. And I believe that charity begins at home. I ain't telling you that I can put all the hardwood houses in St. George South. I can't do that. Actually, when you analyze the land of availability, I can get the lease. But at the end of the day, it is not about me. It is about the citizens of this country. And that's why this resolution came to this chamber this morning. I mentioned also the cost of infrastructure, the high cost of infrastructure in this country. That's why we have to cap services. Because that's where the money is spent, member for St. Michael West, in infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I am here not to quarrel or argue, but to seek to bring clarity to a policy that is known by members in this chamber and should be known by all members in this chamber. I'm here, Mr. Speaker, to bring clarity to any misconceptions or misconception with respect to contractors in this country. Because the Hurricane Elsa project, and don't get me wrong, there was a time we were struggling for money. Funding was not available, and we saw a little dearth with respect to the building of, or rebuilding and the building of these Hurricane Elsa houses. I coming clean with the country, And we were able to access funding. We came in this chamber as part, again, of the housing policy and amended the Catastrophe Fund Act. Member for Christchurch East led that in the absence of the member for St. Joseph. And the member for Christchurch West, I think you led the debate. But he did the work on the legislation. We have a dynamic team. And we were able, after we amended the Catastrophe Fund Act, we were able, therefore, to get the funding again off balance sheet to maintain our fiscal position so we can grow this economy. And I say to you today, again, that the Hurricane Elsa houses will be a thing of the past before June. We have spent thus far $64 million on Hurricane Elsa. 64 million, member for the city grin. Yes, I know you would like to say Jesus something, but Jesus is good. We have spent, Mr. Speaker, $64 million to date. Which other government has taken on the challenge of rebuilding and repairing all the houses from a storm or a hurricane? Tell me one. The last government sought to do it with Hurricane Thomas. And I said, one of the things I did in St. George, people from St. George, I heard my mother listening to me. She told me to keep cool and be calm. But I'm just passionate. I'm not angry, Mom. Mrs. Sutherland, she knows me exceptionally well. You know, the voice, the decibels went up, but I'm passionate about what I'm saying. Hurricane Thomas, the member for St. Thomas, she can tell you, because I consulted her. She was one of the persons who gave me advice coming into elective politics in 2013. And I rebuilt a home in St. George that was damaged from Hurricane Thomas. A preacher, a pastor, like the member for St. George North, the late Moore, Pastor Moore. He was a pastor, he was a friend of Pastor Moore as well. I know him well. Mr. Jones, the Lord rest both of them in their graves. Good men, good Christian men. And they left Mr. Jones in squalor. Tarpaulin on his house, getting wet. Hurricane Thomas, you travel across the length and breadth of this country. Back then you will see still some houses that have not been touched from Hurricane Thomas. Still, I have one in St. George in the area of Bite Mill. And there's one in Black Rock, the member for St. Michael Northwest. The last administration, this administration, took on the responsibility of rebuilding and repairing over 1,400 houses. There were 1,769, and we gave material. We bought the material, and we gave material to close to 250 persons. And the rest, the challenges, remember for St. Lucie, you know this very well. There are some landlord-tenant issues that have stopped us from rebuilding and repairing certain houses, because some of the landlords said, not but here. So we now have to look and see how we can get these persons back into homes on other lands. 689 repairs, 645 rebuilds. Repairs thus far, we have finished 500 out of the 689. And they're just roof repairs. The member for Christchurch East, I saw him celebrating with his people, a contractor. They rebuilt in Silver Sands, it is? In Time Bottom. And these are contractors, over 400 contractors we employed as a government. We gave them the opportunity to repair, to be part of this Hurricane Elsa relief effort by rebuilding and repairing the houses. When this project is finished, we will spend over $100 million. And this figure is around $110 million. And thank God to this government, we have amended the catastrophe fund so that National Housing can access the funding. Our housing policy is off the balance sheet. That's why we have hope. And we are not tinkering with the houses, we are building. Hope mandate is to produce 2,000 houses in this country a year. Between 1,500 to 2,000 a year. Utilizing the small contractors and subcontractors. It's not an easy mandate. But we have to recognize too, we have some small contractors that didn't do justice to the working class people in rebuilding the homes. We give them the opportunity though. And of course, you had to speak to some of them and terminated some of the contracts because of some of the shoddy work that was done. But we give them the opportunity, and they're part of our housing policy in terms of being subcontracting at the Hope. If you go to the Hope now and you see most of the persons building the housing are subcontractors. I saw one today. And he said thanks, he's building at Hope. So, Mr. Speaker, we have not left out the average man or the working class or the black man as we may want to call them in this country. They call them the working class people because they have some white people that are working class too. And I ain't going there, some Bajans born here white, they're working class too. But we have given all of them the opportunity. I don't see much of white men in the small businesses, building houses though. Remember for St. Michael, he's smiling. First time for the day, my friend smiled with me. He's smiling, you could hear the plight of the black man. And he's happy once I begin to speak that language, you know. We can't allow differences on the floor of Parliament to separate us. We all have our differences, but government policy must be articulated that we understand that we're not tinkering with housing policy or housing in this country. We must. Anything we forget? Mr. Speaker, I am going to end on this note. We're using the Hope Inc., Hope ownership providing energy to drive our housing mandate. We're also using NHC, National Housing Corporation. That's why the land is vested both in Hope and NHC. NHC will focus on the 30-year right-to-own program. And the funding for that is coming from the Housing Credit Fund to get these houses built. But we are also hoping that we can unlock the financing through the credit union and the banking sector. So when we sell a house, we can get the money to begin to turn over, sell houses at Vesper Gardens. We also invest in the land, some lands in Hope. We went to Bright Hall in St. Lucie recently, Vineyard, Pleasant Hall. You know, I come to work and I go home sweaty. I don't be in the office sitting down. I am in the Hoskins from parish to parish looking for land and solving problems in this country on behalf of this government as it relates to the housing policy. In jeans and polo shirt. The tie you saw me in every day, looking snazzy according to my wife. I look snazzy, she dresses me. I am afraid to say that. But I like the polo shirt and the jeans. That's what I'm known for as an engineer. I go out there and I look to solve problems. That's me. That's this government. Thank you, member for St. Michael South Central. That's this government. We solve problems. And tonight we're going to St. Thomas to solve problems, rubbing shoulders, the Prime Minister's pet peeve. Go and hear what the people have to say. I guarantee you can hear somebody talk about roads and housing. For sure. Because we have created the environment and the atmosphere where people feel comfortable to tell us what are the issues. And they're confident that we will solve the problems. We are not afraid to rub shoulders. And we are not afraid to accept criticism. I said that this morning. Criticism makes you stronger and better as MPs and as ministers and as a government. And as a government, it's not detrimental to us. It's a positive. So when people curse you, they're not cursing you because they don't like you. They want something solved. And I use the word curse loosely because people don't be with the holes and things. They'll be cursing you nicely and say, man, you ain't doing this for me. I want this done. I want that done. That's how Bajans are. That's how Bajans are. And Mr. Speaker, I am proud to be associated with this government. Mr. Speaker, this resolution caught the attention of not only all the members in this chamber, but others. And I'm sure it will catch the attention of the opposition. But when they begin to speak, I leave them with these words. Tell me or show me the housing policy of the last administration that catered to 10,000 houses in this country, they were tinkering with a housing policy, and persons are now, they feel motivated to get up and tell you they want a house, and they want it here and they want it there. The 12 units in Haggett Hall, we looked at them today. The member for St. Michael East, and he was pleased. And those are the East-West units. Yes, you're going to hear them talk about East-West. They like gay steel houses and they're taking long. Might be so. Might be so. But at the end of the day, it's new technology. But I guarantee you that all 150 will be finished in this financial year coming. Every single one of them. And I don't think the last administration built 150 houses in a year. And that's just a drop in the bucket of what we want to achieve. So, Mr. Speaker, as we seek to unfold and articulate and spread the housing policy, if that is a failing, it won't be a failing after today. Because I will be in every nook and cranny asking my members to be at their branch meetings to speak to the housing policy like I did on Sunday in St. Michael Southeast, so that every single Barbadian, and the member for St. James West promised me, Central, sorry, I keep saying West, St. James Central, he's next to Christchurch West. He promised me that right after the estimates, he would have me in St. James Central. I ain't sure what is keeping him back. Yes, he was overseas. That's the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But, Mr. Speaker, I am proud to be associated with this government. I'm even prouder to be associated with the housing policy. And I will say to you, Mr. Speaker, this government intends to achieve its target of allowing the ordinary Barbadian, the gas attendant, teachers, policemen, policewomen, firemen, maids, persons at the base of the pyramid. That's why we have categorized in part of the housing policy, and I forgot to mention this as well. We recognize that income levels vary, and we recognize some person working for $2,000 per month net can't get a house value can't afford, but they can get, probably it is challenging to afford a house value at $315,000. I don't want to warm back up, Mr. Speaker, because I can speak on this for a whole day. I don't want to do that. I want to land the plane. But persons working for under $2,500 a month, this is part of the policy, have an opportunity to own a home. And I mentioned that $99,000 with photovoltaic on the roof. And the reason why they will afford this house, because we have capped the price of the land and everything. The price of the land is valued at roughly around $40,000. We are not going below 3,500 square feet of land for these houses. We are not giving people little poo-poo spots. We are giving you the spots and selling you a nice piece of land that you can have in your backyard. You can do some farming. Remember, for St. Philip South, you can do some farming. You can do whatever. You can hold a little speakeasy in the back and sell some drinks and stuff like that. We call it a little speakeasy. That is how we are selling this land. A speakeasy, yeah. That's the country term. You remember for Christchurch, West Central, you know that term? A little speakeasy, you know. But the value of the houses, persons working for under $2,500 a month net can afford a house at $99,000. Selling price, $99,000, a 2-bedroom, Joe Villa Hardwood. Where other places can you have this? Which other government made it possible for working class people to buy a home for $99,000? I ain't angry, I'm passionate. I ain't angry. I ain't angry, I'm passionate. A cost of a 3-bedroom house at $120,000. And if you look at the value of the land for these houses, $3,500 a square foot, we cap the price of the land and services 12 and 5 respectively to allow persons to own a home, a Joe Villa house in St. Philip West. Remember? In Brayton, I went through Brayton, and I keep remembering those persons as you travel to Brayton, you left Campaign Castle, you hit Brayton on the left, the second left turn, and I went in the back in the Hoskins, and I saw the Hurricane Elsa repairs, and the persons were indeed happy with this government. Hope Inc., value of land capped around $40,000 to $60,000. We're selling houses, 2-bedroom at $190,000 for persons earning between $25,000 to $5,000. $2,500 to $5,000. And 3-bedroom houses, persons earning again between $2,500 to $5,000, they can get a home for $242,000. Where else which other government did this? Utilizing photovoltaic on the roofs. And I must stress that we were innovative. We capped the services, we capped the price of land at 12 and services at 5 to come up with these prices. This is realistic. This is no poo-pooing at a housing policy. This will allow us to fulfill the dearth that exists in terms of persons who need housing in this country. Civil servants, when I did and thanks to National Housing, the backlog showed there were roughly around 8,000 civil servants who applied to National Housing. When we sanitize and take out the deceased, the Lord rest them, and everything, some got housing, there's still 8,000. What's the role of the civil service, including SOEs? Over 20,000, right? Over 25,000, so you have 8,000 out of those persons. 8,000 include persons from the SOEs, the nurses and those. Yeah, member for the city, he's looking into this roof. Perhaps I have failed in not articulating the housing policy enough. If that's my failing, I accept it. And I will do better. Because I don't want, as we leave in here, none of our members unsure about government's housing policy. Never, ever again. We have to be sure about government housing policy, and I take responsibility for that. I am man enough to say I'm wrong, because that's what learning is about. But Mr. Speaker, I end by saying to you, housing, as I started, is an exemplary expression of, indeed, a wonderful society. Housing brings peace of mind, happiness to the people of any country. Housing solves ill health and social decay in a country. And Mr. Speaker, it is where we vote. A former US president said it's a place we vote, it's a place we pay taxes, and a place we educate our children. And to prepare Barbados for 50 years down the road, where our children will become the men of tomorrow and leaders of tomorrow, we have to get our housing policy right. And Mr. Speaker, with those few words, this land, 40 acres, 9.9 will be vested in Hope, and the other 20.5 will be vested in National Housing. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg that this resolution now pass.
Honourable member, you're referring to Order 11 on the paper?
Speaker, I beg to move that resolution number 11 now pass.
Right. The question is that resolution number 11 on the order paper do now pass? All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that Resolution 12 Mr. Speaker,
Answer.
Mr. Speaker, sorry.
St. James.
I beg that Resolution 12 no pass.
The question is that resolution number 12 on the order paper do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Resolution number 12 stands passed. Honorable member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House suspends its business for 15 minutes.
The question of this honorable chamber will be suspended for 15 minutes. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against it, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended for 15 minutes.